Starbuck was, I got him right after he got out of prison, now that I think about it. He was Canyon City, Colorado. And so thank you, Kathy. He just kind of rolls his eyes and says, I have no idea what you're getting me into. But it all comes down, that's really what I want to talk about. It comes down to developing this relationship and really developing trust. And that's really, we never stop working on that. I've never really felt like I had this still small voice from God saying, Randy, you've arrived. Good job. No more to work on. You know, I get this still small voice that goes, man, you're still messing up. Sometimes it's not a still small voice. So I learn a lot from horses and just relating to how they process their learning and how they're always learning and growing. So if I were to take him and yeah, there you go. Get him going through some of these things, and this is kind of cool here. Okay, can you step up there and just stand for me, buddy? There you go. So there you go. To get a horse, just to say, you know, I'm just gonna stand on a pedestal, or go over a teeter-totter bridge, or whatever else it is, isn't automatic. So I want to talk about believing God. Not necessarily believing in God, but the difference may be in believing in God and believing God. Believing God is much more difficult. Maybe a better way of saying is it takes a lot more time and trust and obstacles, if you will, overcoming things to really start believing God, not just believing in God. Let me explain it, because I think it can get overly semantical. So I'm not saying don't ever say you believe in God. That's, you know, I'll say that all the time. I believe in God. But there's something when that believing in God also involves believing God. In the book of James, he says to the readers in James 2:19, he said, you believe there's one God, you're doing well. He said, the devils also believe that, and they tremble. So he's really making a statement beyond just semantics. We're living in a day today where there's really a crisis of faith. And we're seeing it more and more. We desperately need men and women who will say, you know, I believe God. I don't just have an abstract belief, but I believe God. If you look at social media, has become this place of scams and hate and criticism, and you post something on social media, it doesn't take long before somebody's going to find something to criticize, or it's not uncommon. And there's this sense that of being in the center of the universe rather than being part of the answer, if you will. So is it just believing in God? And I believe that's acceptable. You can look at most politicians. They believe in God. Matter of fact, they'll put their hand on, and here in America, they'll put their hand on the Bible and affirm before God. But if you get right down to believing God, it's a different subject. People will say something like this: well, I believe in God, but I really have a problem with the Bible. Well, or I'll take it a step further. I believe in America, but I really have problems with the Constitution. You know, I believe in America, but that First and Second Amendment thing has got to go. So, I mean, if that's what, we do the same thing with the Bible. Well, there are certain things I don't agree with, so if I don't agree with it, then it's just irrelevant. I believe in God, but I don't believe that the Bible is true. Interesting, just a little quick side note. If that's a conclusion, and I've been there, I've wrestled with some of this. If that's the conclusion we reach, that we believe that there is that God is real, but the Bible is flawed, then we end up with an anemic, emasculated God, because over a few thousand years he wasn't able to get 40 people to get his story right. So at some point we either come down to a very weak God, or that maybe he exists and he doesn't change and I need to. So there's a Super Bowl. They got this Jesus Gets It. I don't know if you, so, and it's really controversial. See, we're comfortable, and I'm going to get somewhere with this, I promise. We're comfortable with saying the universe is trying to tell me something, but we're not comfortable saying God said. We used to, when I was growing up, well, I've been talking to the man upstairs. See, we're comfortable with the man upstairs of the universe, but when it comes right down to God has a amazing plan, one of the reasons we like that is because my feelings are in charge of that. So if a horse gets involved and their feelings are in charge of everything, then I'm in trouble. One of the things that I do is really work on getting their feelings submitted to their thinking. So you're always working on a horse's thing. We don't train a horse's feet to do anything. Can you move over this way a little bit, buddy? So we don't really train feet like, so the brain has to say something. So the question I have, and when I go hunting or I go riding or if I'm by myself, I'll have these times where I have these big intellectual thoughts and battles with myself. Do I believe that God is in control? I know that there are certain things that I believe about God, but when it comes down to do I really believe God, sometimes I would just as soon that God would change his mind. The horse is always trying to train me. Every horse I get tries to train me. So he says, I really like this, the whole stall and feeding thing. I love that about you. And I really like it that you put shade over my head. That's really awesome. So my owner feeds me and puts shade over my head, but please don't do all this writing stuff. So then he could go to his buddies and say, my owner is a feed shade guy. And so if I'm going to have a useful horse, I'm going to say there are certain things that you're going to be uncomfortable with because I want to take you to a new level. I've had people comment, especially people who work with horses, and this horse really moves out well. He'll go over jumps, he'll go through things. This right here, for you horse people, is really pretty awesome. He will stand and wait for me to ask him to do something else. And he's just figured out that that's all he has to do. So horses want to believe on their terms. Horses want me to be kind of like them. Even wild horses believe in me. If you walk into a pen, these guys that shared, you could ask them, but if you walk into a pen with a wild horse, one of the reasons we have round pens is that horse is instinctively going to want to run away. And so when it's round, they just keep running in a circle. You just stand there and go, after a while the horse goes, this isn't working. Have you been there? You say, well, God, I believe you, but I really want to be over here, want to do my thing. And after a while, I go, yeah, this really isn't working. People used to ask me how I select horses to bring over to training. A lot of times, if I had time, I would go into the big pen. We'd have like 80 horses per big pen. And I'd sit there, and some of them come up. There are always a few that'll come up and say, I think people are okay. Would you pet me? And I always liked petting them. And there was always a few that would come in close. They would look. They would take a step back. They would look. They would a different angle. They would look, and I could get a look at their eyes. And I really like to find horses with kind eyes. Those are usually the horses that I would pick, because the horse is really in my space saying, "Pet me, pet me." You get them over in training, and they say, "Hey, that's not what I signed up for. I'm a petting horse. That's my gift. I like to be petted." Did you wake up? He does. If he closes his eyes, he's not sleeping. He's praying. Okay, just to let you know, it's not. So what is it when you move with a horse from believing in me to believing me? And the big difference is relationship. Religion, believing in God is pretty much religion. Believing God is relationship. So this horse moves from believing in me to believing me. Believing God is critical to moving forward, not just abstract, where I'm in charge of who He is. So the first thing is, believing God will get you out of a mess. Believing God will get you out of a mess. Now, let me start off by saying sometimes believing God will get you in a mess. That's just honest, okay? Some of you have had those difficult times where you say, "Man, if I didn't have these standards, I wouldn't be in a mess." But it'll get you out of the mess that it got you into. In Acts 27, the Apostle Paul is under arrest by the Romans. He's being transported. And they got this ship, and he says he's a prisoner. He said, "Guys, it really isn't a good time. You really don't need to be traveling. I really feel like the Lord has told me that this isn't a good thing to do." Well, the captain checks with the guards, and they say, "What does this guy know?" So they get on this ship, and before long, they're in the midst of a huge storm, and they barely escape with their lives. And they're throwing stuff overboard to lighten the load. And so Paul has this encounter where he says to them, he said, "Guys, I want you to know, this in the middle of the storm is raging." He said, "I want you to know that I've been praying, and God said we're gonna get through this." He says this, "Take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as He told me." And they end up losing the ship and getting stranded on an island. God is looking for men and women who, in the midst of the storm, will say, "I know it doesn't look good, but I believe God. That I believe God has a plan. I don't believe that this has escaped God's attention." God is looking for people who will say, "I know there's a mountain, but God's bigger than the mountain." Matter of fact, Jesus said, He said, "Wherefore I say unto you, if you say to this mountain, be thou removed and be thou cast in the sea, and believe what you're saying will come to pass," He said, if I'm in that mountain is going to move. So we need to trust God in the middle of the mess. So what if I get it wrong? You'll get it wrong every once in a while. I'll give you an example. I was riding a horse, happened to be a Mustang. It was a big, drafty mare, and what I used to enjoy doing is I would get saddlebags full of stuff and a sleeping bag and ride out in the mountains where a creek was and just spend a couple of days with just me and my horse in the mountains. So we had this thing, went way up in the Bloody Basin area where the old ranch was, and I went back way up to Mockingbird Springs and wanted to explore back in there. And coming back, you got to hit the right trail. And coming back, I got off the the trail I needed to be on, and I end up coming down, and it bluffs up. And so I looked down, and the wash is a ways down. It was bluffed up. It was pretty much that shale rock. So I turned the mare's nose, and I just wanted to look over the edge and see if it was possible. And I thought, man, I can't even lead her down that. It's just too steep. Well, she thought I was telling her to step off. And she stepped off, tucked her butt, and we slid gracefully to the bottom. And she got back up and looked at me and said, okay, we're heading on. I think, so with her, I didn't say, you stupid horse, I didn't ask you to step off. I said, that's pretty awesome. We lived through it, that's why. But I think sometimes in life we think, God, I think you're wanting me to take a step here. And God doesn't say, you stupid idiot. He say, man, I'd rather you take a step than you stand there for 2 days wondering what to do. So will you mess up at times? I've realized years back that God does more in spite of me than because of me. I'm serious. I have no question. When I was 18 when I became a Christian. When I was 18 and I said, God, I just surrender my life to you. I don't believe anybody in heaven looked over and said, man, we got us a good deal. It was, well, they kind of looked around and said, we got our work cut out for us. So sometimes we think, well, am I good enough? Will I get it all right? And we sometimes spend so much time waiting to see if we'll have this lightning bolt thing and have the answer rather than just saying, God, I'm going to step out. I believe today, and I went to seminary, I pastored, and I've always been somewhat put off by religion. We need churches today that are more interested in pleasing God and believing God than making a name for themselves and building their kingdoms and where it's all about money and everything else. I realize all those things are part of the whole process. I'm not saying that we get on, I started to say get on this high horse about it, but we get all judgmental. But I really think if we say I believe God, I don't have all the answers. We need men and women who are more interested in believing God than what culture says. Bowing to a woke, divisive culture. If we believe God, there's no room for divisiveness and hate. Media in the guise of inclusiveness. The Bible says this. The Bible says, love is of God. God is love. In Him there is no darkness. The matter of fact, here's what the Bible says. We look at this whole racial divisiveness and all the other things. God says this: there's neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. He's saying this: no one is better than anybody else. No one is better than anyone else. He said, if you're a slave, your master is no better than you are. Understand that. You may not want to tell him, but understand it. He said, if you're a woman, there's no man that's any better than you are. If you're a man, there's no way. You're just saying, if you're Jewish, if you're this race, the Greeks, there's no difference. So in Scripture, I believe that the Bible is clear. We just need people who will say, I believe God. Believing God will transform your world. Let me read you something. And this was written by a president. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We've grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us. We have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to the God that made us. That was written in the middle of the American Civil War by Abraham Lincoln, who became president as an atheist. Interesting, fascinating story. And he became a believer in Christ and committed his life to Christ while he was president and during the Civil War. Believing God will transform your world. And what Abraham Lincoln was responding to was a request by the United States Senate to declare a national day of prayer. God, I wish we had that in politics today, where we had people who would simply stand and say the answer is not in all these other things. The answer is America returning to God. And I tell you, Canada has it rougher than America does. In Canada, there are pastors being arrested just for reading scriptures out of the Bible, and we're foolish if we don't think that's coming here. I'm not saying you guys brought it, so that's not where I'm going with this. Okay. So all of that aside, I want to end with this thought, because believing God, yes, will transform nations and transform the world. But first of all, believing God will transform your life. We won't change the world until we decide we're going to change our own lives. We need to believe that His Word is true. It was really a number of years back when I started the Wild Horse program. I was pastoring. I was training Mustangs then, but I was pastoring a church, and when I took the job at the prison to start the program there, I thought, well, this is a new chapter, and it certainly was. But I thought, well, so my time of whatever it is with representing God or pulpit ministry, whatever you want to call it, is that chapter's over and another chapter started. I didn't realize that God was going to integrate both of those. And I mentioned the documentaries and the various things on the program, and this horse has been in a lot of them. But what it did, last year I was in southern France. From southern France, I went to Denmark, preached at one of the oldest churches in Denmark, built in the 1500s. And it's just all the open doors. I couldn't have opened them, but the horse program. So God just integrated both. In 2 weeks, I'll be in Uruguay in South America, working with troubled youth in a program that they modeled the Wild Horse Inmate program, and took it back to Uruguay to work with troubled youth. And it's amazing what God can do. So we need to believe His Word is true. And here's what happens when we start believing that. One, I have to believe that He created me. If He created me, He didn't create junk. His creation. If you're His creation, He didn't say, well, I've got leftover parts, so we'll make you. He said here, matter of fact, the psalmist in Psalm 139:14, he says, behold, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, O God, and that my soul knows right well. He said, God, you did an amazing thing when you made me. If we believe the Word of God and we believe God, we believe that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in Him would not perish, but have everlasting life. If we believe that God is really who He says He is, then we believe that we don't have to be perfect, that God doesn't select perfect people, He selects people who are willing. If we believe God, we believe that He has a purpose for our lives, whatever that is. If you're here and you're breathing, God has a plan for your life. And as far as I can tell, everyone that's here is breathing. So God has a plan for your life. It's when I talk about God getting out of a mess and putting you on the right track. Let me close with this. A lot of you know. I'll quit mumbling. Let me close with a thought here. I hate it when people do that. I'm just mumbling. A lot of you know that I went from law enforcement actually into ministry, and I actually stayed connected with law enforcement for probably 20 years while I was pastoring, and I moved more into chaplaincy and crisis. I started out in law enforcement. Right before I went to the academy, my lieutenant said, would you, when you get out of the academy, we need somebody to go deep undercover. So deep undercover is different than vice, narcotics. You don't go to the police department. You don't carry a badge. You don't, you know. So I went back and I told him, yeah, I'll do that. So I got out of the academy. I went undercover, and it didn't take long. And I was a Christian, and it was. They told me, they said, well, for one thing, you probably never have to pull your weapon. Because if you do, your cover's blown. The first deal I did, everything went south on that deal, and I stayed undercover, which is really stupid. Anyway, so I said, oh well, you know, nobody saw me, and that's probably true. But here's what happened. Late one night, it really started just kind of caving in on me. And I realized that I was losing sight of who I was. And I met with my liaison officer. We met in the back of a cemetery in Arlington, Texas. And I was sitting there, and I started singing an old song. Matter of fact, it's interesting, a couple of the guys here are working with a friend of mine, Johnny Davis. And it was John, in that old Foursquare church, there was a song that they would sing. It said, keep me true, Lord Jesus, keep me true. There's a race that I must run. There are victories to be won. Give me power every hour to be true. And I remember singing that song, waiting for my liaison officer to get there. And when he got there, I said, Rick, I've got to transfer out of working undercover. My nerves were shot. I was down to 150 pounds. I was 24 years old. And probably 23 or 24. And he said, Randy, he said, you don't know what you're doing. He said, you could write your ticket in law enforcement. And my sergeant tried to talk me into staying. And I said, yeah, and I couldn't explain it other than I said, I believe that God is telling me I've got to get out. And so I got out and worked patrol. Fast forward 15 years. My sergeant became, George Bush was governor of Texas. My sergeant became the drug czar for the entire state of Texas. And I remember thinking, man, you know, when they said you could write your ticket in law enforcement, man, I had an in. It was a number of years later, a friend of mine said, did you hear what happened to John? I said, no. He said, well, nobody knows what happened, but he's homeless. He's living in Austin, and some of the officers will take him a hamburger or something. About 2 years after that, the same friend of mine said, I just found out that they found John dead under an overpass. And it all sunk in on me. I think sometimes, when somebody says, boy, you've got all these advantages over here, you've got this going for you, you need to pursue this. Sometimes we don't realize when God says, it's time that you do something else, you realize that when somebody says you can write your own ticket, that ticket's going to take me somewhere. So for me, believing in God is critical. Believing God is a struggle. Believing God is saying, God, this really looks good over here. This doesn't, I don't really want to do that. And we say, God, I just believe that this is what you're saying, and you process that and start moving in that direction, and it's amazing what God does. Well, I believe we're living in a day where those people who say I believe God and I believe in God are really becoming the voice of reason and the foundation for a nation and a world in trouble. So let me do it. Oh, sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to wake you up. This guy here, so a lot of you haven't seen him do some, he'll do the same thing with somebody on his back. And this is really a good example of, okay, get centered there, get your foot up. Good for you, good for you. So this takes a lot of just trust and a lot of him saying, I have no idea why I'm standing on a pedestal. But I trust you. There's got to be some sort of a reason. So I have no idea why. Oh, you okay? All right. So what he does is just simply say, you ask me to do that, so obviously I can, and so I'm going to step out of it. One day I was coming over, and I was going to get the teeter-totter set up right so that he could walk over it, and he said, well, I think you must just want me to go over it then. So he did it on his own. But what he will do, yeah.
That's for the horse, not you.
I know. Matter of fact, I got that. We'll close with this because horses don't typically. Marv can. I tell you what. Can you guys grab that board over there? Well, I did this at in Apache Junction, but so what this horse will do. If I say, I want you need to take a step forward, he'll say, but that thing's in front of me, but you say take a step forward, so we'll just hold it on your hip there. So, yeah. So right there, he says, okay, that's saying I can't go any further. Corrals are made out of boards, and so this is telling me that I can't go any further. So if I say, okay, you go further, he'll just. Yes, I do. I want to do the shorter one now. My point is, this horse will do some things, and I'll go, God, I wish I was like that. I go, there's a barrier there, God. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I can't go any further. And God said, well, you take a step. God, there's a barrier. There's an obstacle. And what God is saying, would you trust me enough to realize that if there's a barrier there and I tell you to take a step, then I know that the barrier is going to break and you aren't. That's a difference in believing in God abstractly and believing God specifically, and it's a process. When I started teaching Starbuck to do that, he just said, "Okay, and so now I've got to watch him, because if I've got to say, okay, I want to be sure that he knows that I'm asking him to do it and doesn't just think that I'm asking him to go off a cliff or something." So he'll tell me sometimes if it's if he goes, no, you're going too far. So I don't know where everyone is, obviously, what battles you face, but I want to challenge you to in your time of just processing through that, saying, God, I think it's okay to say, God, are you believable? God can handle the tough questions. God, can I trust you? Can I believe you? Is this Bible something just people just put together to control the masses, or is it really true? And if it's true, help me process that. The Bible says this. It says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. But he says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. I would much rather work out your salvation than mine. We say, I think I could tell everybody else what to do. God says, work out your own. So I want to encourage you to say, God, here's some of the things that I'm encountering in life. Here's some of the things I'm wrestling. Here's some of the things that I've wrestled with all my life. Here's things in my family. Here's things I can't get rid of. Things in my family. Things in my own weaknesses or just decisions. God, are you really believable? If the answer to that is you are, then God help me to believe you. There's in one scripture, the guy says this, and I think it's a great statement. Jesus says, do you believe this? He said, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. God, I believe, but God, there's part of me that goes, no, I don't. I think here's a guy that's honest. Lord, yes, I believe, help my unbelief. So you know what I'll do with this horse? If he struggles with some of these things, I'll get off and help him figure it out. I don't say, you idiot. Say, you know what? You're struggling with that. I'll get off and I'll help him figure it out. Then I'll get back on and we'll go on. God does that more with you and I than we realize. Jesus came down from heaven, died on a cross, said, I'll walk with you through impossible situations and tough times and help you figure it out. And then we'll move on. Let's pray. God, I pray for every individual here. I pray for every life, every heart, every need. I pray for those that are encountering impossibilities. God, would you help us to learn how to believe you as we grow in believing in you. And God, would you help us to become the people you created us to be? And Lord, would you go before us and make the rough places smooth and the crooked places straight? And we thank you for it in Jesus' name.